Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Meet the Experts. I believe this is episode 60 or 61, but we have crossed another threshold and another milestone for the show. And it's always fun. Every time I do another 10, I'm like, wow, we hit 60. I mean, we'll be going for 70. I think 100 will be super special. But every episode has been great. I've learned so much through this process of getting to know people from around the world that do different things that I otherwise probably wouldn't know anything about. And just meeting people and bringing them into my overall network has been fun. Giving business owners the chance to talk about who they are and what they do in a really easy digital format. Giving them the video when it's all said and done has been pretty rewarding, to say the least. And business owners have loved to. I mean, look, as business owners, we like to talk about ourselves and what we do. Right? We're networkers. We're people. Right? So to be able to offer this has always been great. Today's episode is going to be no different. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to talk to Suzanne Jabour, who's a grieving mom, and she has found meaning in her loss through opening up conversations about grief and how it works and what's going on when you experience it. And grief's a tough, difficult subject to talk about. So I think we're going to do it in a real fun way. I want to let Suzanne talk about it. She's the one that's really good at talking about it. So without further ado, let me bring Suzanne up on the screen. Suzanne, hi, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to I'm excited to talk about grief. Doesn't sound right. Doesn't roll off the tongue well, but it is something that we all deal with in life. Like everybody's going to go through grief multiple times through their lives. So it's probably a really important topic. And I think what you do, being a certified educator, teacher, coach on this topic, really, this episode could probably, I hope it helps people, a lot. So tell us more about who you are and what you do.
As you said, I'm a grieving mom, and I became a grief educator because one of the things I learned very early in my most recent grief was that I didn't know enough about how it really operated, even though it wasn't my first loss of someone close to me. And the people around me didn't know how to support me. And once I got past sort of the survival days of those very early days after my son died, I really just was so curious about why that was. Why don't we know enough about how to do it ourselves? Why don't we know how to show up and support each other? Why are we all so scared? There's a lot of fear around grief, as I think there is about everything that we don't know very much about. So I thought, well, what can I do to change that? And that really now has become my mission. Like, I'm after a big culture shift about how, at least in the Western cultures, North America for sure, we don't talk about grief. We don't share our stories about grief. We don't talk about the symptoms we all have. And so then when it happens to you, you're dealing with the loss of your loved one or whatever the loss was, because we'll presence immediately that grief happens for all kinds of losses. For me, I come to this work after the loss of my son, but we experience grief for losses of opportunities and friendships and pets and businesses, or we do a great launch and it fizzles, and there's grief there, right? We've put our heart and soul into this big thing, and then, we launch it and nothing happens. So I think we need a much more robust conversation about grief, about where it shows up and what happens to us when it does, and how we can show up and help each other more. Because really right now, grief is a time of isolation, and I think it could become a time of connection.
That's really important that you said that, I think. And that was kind of what I was thinking about. It's like you talked about the fear. And sometimes, we hear that somebody lost a family member, they lost a loved one, they lost a pet. And we know the superficial things to say, but we're terrified we don't know how much connection is too much connection, or do they want to be bothered? Do they not want to be bothered? We have all these questions about it. And I'm so glad to get to talk about that. So how do you come in, and what are some of your services, and how do they help? And what do you do a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I come in either as a speaker, or I have a whole, business package. So if I'm coming in as a speaker, as you say, we're going to talk about it in a way that hopefully makes people not want to go, oh my gosh, I don't want to listen to this anymore. my goal is to have people lean into a conversation about grief instead of running screaming for the hills.
Right.
So I'll come in as a speaker and give a, entertaining and informative talk about grief, which I know sounds counterintuitive, but really is possible. And when I'm working with businesses, the goal is to really shift the culture and create a workspace where when we're grieving and we're at work, which I'm here to tell you is many of us at any given time, businesses wildly underestimate how many people on their staff are grieving at any
Oh no.
time.
We froze up
It's a
little bit.
lot. So what I look at, yeah, we did. Do we want to go back a few minutes? 2 seconds?
Nah, we're okay. We're okay. Just go back about 30
Okay.
seconds. We're fine.
Yep. So what I do with businesses is come in and create a standardized, robust system that then grievers can plug into. So everyone has a baseline education. Everyone has a version of a comfort level because we're all different, and it's not going to be as comfortable for some as it is for others, and it's going to be uncomfortable for all of us. And then there's a system that people can plug into. So it takes the onus off the griever who really can't conceptualize what they really need anyway, and lets them instead look at a list of possibilities and go, oh yeah, that would be really helpful this week. And then has a follow-up system in it. So we're going to touch base in a week, look at what you need then, and provides that ongoing support. What I hear from business owners is, yeah, you get your 3 days off and maybe a referral to the employee assistance program, but that doesn't help you when you come to work and you have brain fog and time doesn't work the same way and it's hard to concentrate. So how do we help with those things so that grievers in the workplace can still be feeling productive? Grief for many grievers is a place we kind of touch the normal world that feels most of the time like it's moving on without us while we exist in a post-apocalyptic nightmare. So you get to kind of touch that. For some people, it's a respite from their grief, right? You come to work and you just get to be normal for a little while, and then you go back home and you're back in the stew of it all. So there's lots of ways we can create scaffolds around those folks because they are valued parts of our team. And especially right now when it's such an employee market, if you don't have systems for people who are struggling that they can access, they will quit and have a new job tomorrow.
Right.
So, it behooves us as business leaders to really be creating systems that help with psychological safety, that help people feel seen, heard, and valued, so that everyone knows they're an important part of the team. That stuff all needs to be there. And I mean, I could quote research from forever to forever. Go on a ChatGPT, ask it, it'll pull up all the best stuff, but it's a big issue right now.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting how you talk about that, kind of just like 3 days and maybe a chat with the HR or somebody on, like on a staff or a grief counselor. I know I personally have experienced like coming to work to escape the grief for a while, that's happened recently with the loss of a pet that we had for 14 years, who was we'd had her for 13 of the 14 years she was alive. It was an adoption rescue from years ago. And we had to suddenly put her down. We weren't expecting it. And, I just remember immersing myself for like a week in work, because I guess I just didn't really want to think about it, but I feel like I couldn't avoid thinking about it. So I still had to deal with the grief, but I felt like work was just giving me a break, but it's my business. Now I think about it. If I was an employee, would my employer have felt, like it would have understood that I needed, the break? Maybe we just say, oh, you're doing a great job this week. Yeah. Because I don't want to think about what I'm really going through. That's a different thing. So it's interesting that you try to bring that into corporate culture.
So I'm so sorry that happened.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's interesting though. Like it's one of those things that until then we have this conversation and I'm like thinking about those things and it becomes real again in a sense that I'm lucky. I'm fortunate. I have a business that I own. But then I have to think about like the people that work for me, work with me. Like what might they be going through, and how could I support them? And I think maybe as business owners, we do need to take a step back and look at that. So I think what you're doing is super awesome. And I'm sure there have been customers or clients of people you've talked to or helped or spoken to that have gotten some great results? And of course, I would never ask for specific names or anything, but do you have any of those like wins or testimonials that you think of some people that you might have helped?
Yeah, it's so interesting. My favorite ones are so often a business will come to me because they've had a staff person lose a loved one, and they have that conversation, right? This, like, we're not supporting people enough. What can we do? And they find their way to me because magic. And my favorite testimonials are the ones where it happens again. That's not my favorite part, but that when it happens again, they know what to do. They feel a little bit more comfortable. They have some tools they can pull on. They have a policy, right, that everybody knows about. And it just becomes such a different experience. And then they get to build from there, right? We just get better and better at things as we practice. We know that everywhere else in our life. And we need now to apply that to grief, right? When I think about, I do a series of workshops for community groups as well, where we talk about, what can I say? Because we have to start with saying something. And then what can I do? And then how does this show up at work? And I love the stories where people will email me back and say, like, I did your workshop. And then like my friend phoned me and said something had happened. And I knew that I could say something appropriate, and I didn't have to feel scared. And I didn't have to rely on, as you say, those old cliches that, really at best are neutral. Some of them are actively harmful because the subtext is outrageous. Really, I love doing a brainstorm, and then we like rip up our papers, and if we can, like, I send people home to have a ceremonial burning. Like, we really just need to release all those back to whatever era they came from, because they are not now.
Right.
But that sense that people, either come up with a great idea of a way to help someone, or a business now has a system. So as you say, when that employee shows up, they just need to say, I've had a loss and I'm in grief, and can we pull that policy up together? And then the employer knows what to offer because we've worked through it together. We've had our, dream list come from the staff, and then the reality list come from leadership, and everybody knows about it. And we're all on the same page together. And that also helps us take some of the fear away. Because for all of us, if we have a support system to plug into, if we have some tools in our toolbox, then we feel okay. Yes, we're still uncomfortable. That's a given. It's always going to be uncomfortable. We're always going to not want to have the conversation. We all wish grief wasn't a thing, but it is. And so how can we do it better so people aren't isolated and we're not all tangled in fear? And instead, we're building connection, and we're building support structures, and we're allowing people to be themselves.
Yeah. I love that. I love the feeling of connection and community. And I think that's one of the most important things we can all have. And it's really cool when I think the testimonials, the wins, the things where you're like, wow, what I'm doing is really making a difference in people's lives or in businesses, functions, operations, then that's really, really good. Now, I know this question's kind of tough, but from where you started as a grieving mom, I always say, how'd you earn it, learn it, improve your authority? Like, well, geez, not that you wanted to earn it, right? But like, what has it taken since that time that got you like so passionate in order to feel like is there any training or certification or anything that you've gone through to become better as a grief educator?
Yes, of course. So I really started off focused on my, what was happening for me personally, which is why my website ended up with the name A Lived Experience, because I thought that's how I earned it, right? In a way that every parent wishes would never happen. And I certainly, if I had my druthers, would never happen to another parent. So that's a big part of how I earned it. And then when Ben had died, I had just finished doing women's centered transformational coaching training. So I had that underpinning. I'm a certified teacher, so I have that training. I've done corporate training for every job I'm in. I seem to end up being the trainer. So, public speaking and training is easy for me. So all of those things kind of conspired together. And then I realized I really did want a grounding in grief education, so that I was sure, first of all, that my experience wasn't something foreign, right? That I hadn't done some weird thing. And also so that I just had a foundation of other people's experiences and other ways that people experience loss, other ways that grief impacts them. So I did my grief educator training with David Kessler, who's a very well-known grief expert. And that was important to me, to have that sense that what I had to say actually was grounded in the science, was grounded in the research. You know, I'm not a brilliant researcher, but lots of other people are.
Right.
So it was hooking into, you know, I can look at what they have discovered. And for me now, I'm just endlessly curious. I'm always reading some new study or some new something, or, you know, how are we valuing this? How does it, I just bought a book yesterday because I listened to this astonishingly great researcher who's a neuroscientist, and she's studying what grief does to our brain, which is so cool. And I'm just thinking about you and your pet loss. And I certainly experienced it with the loss of my son. When you have that idea that, oh, like I want to go and throw the ball, or I want to go and well, we never want to change the kitty litter. I don't know if you lost a cat or a dog or a bird or a fish or whatever, but you know, I have those thoughts where I'm like, oh, like I want to make sure I tell Ben that. And what actually is happening in our brain is that path fires. So the path that says, I'm going to tell Ben, and then it hits the path that knows that Ben isn't here anymore. And that's where we get that little, like, you know, that fritz that happens in your brain.
Yes.
I am so fascinated by that. I just bought the book yesterday. I can hardly wait to read the whole thing.
When Juno passed away, or we put her down, it was almost comical in our house, but she would lay at the foot of the bed. And if I had to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, inevitably I would trip over her all the time. And right after she died, I remember waking up in the middle of the night and I was like trying to tiptoe around so I wouldn't trip over her. And and got that fritz where I was like, oh, she's not here. And then, you know, but it happened like 3 or 4 times, because I'm in the middle of a stupor, just waking up in the middle of the night thinking like, oh, I'm going to trip over. Oh, wait, she's not there. And that's exactly what, that's, I would love to kind of talk with you again down the road to kind of feel or find out what that book talks about, or maybe you can email it to me later. You know, because that is, I mean, I don't know if I'm as passionate about it as you, but I think it is fascinating to why, you know, I guess, you know, you don't really know what happens in the brain that does that. So that's cool.
But it helped me understand the brain fog, right? Because grief brain fog is really common.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out why. But if your brain is actually reprogramming itself, like it's rewiring, oh, well, that makes perfect sense then that it's foggy. It's really busy.
Yeah, it's doing a lot. Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Well, that's very, very cool. I've got a couple more questions for you. This has been awesome. But and this one, we can kind of change gears. It could be professional, it could be personal, however you want to answer it. But if I said, Suzanne, what's something you're thankful for? What would you tell me?
Oh, I mean, so many things. I'm thankful that this is going to sound really strange to people because it goes back to that whole being thankful for grief and loss. I'm thankful that when this horrible thing happened in my life and my son's, that I was able to be really clear that there was a life to be lived still, and it was mine. And that I was able to hold the whole horrifying, awful, hideous experience with some curiosity. And that I had people around me that were able to allow that to be okay, that didn't want me to be living the story that society tells us about a grieving parent.
Right.
And were able to allow me to be curious and be wondering and be, devastated, curled up in a ball on the couch sobbing, and all the things, and still just take baby steps to rebuild myself, to rebuild a life.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I'm like, as I'm listening to you say that, I'm like, gosh, I would never want to go through it. It's getting me emotional. But I do think that it's really important that you say that, because we can be thankful for bad things to happen if the outcome can be that we can grow from it and we can be better people and we can help others more and we can do something more with our life. Then I think that's totally acceptable to be thankful for something that you wish never happened in the first place, but you still made the best of what you couldn't change at that point, you know?
Yeah. So. And to be very clear, I would give it all up in a heartbeat to have him back.
Absolutely. No doubts. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Well, I got one question, and now I've had people get emotional on my show before, but it's never been me. So this is a good one. What What are some things that maybe you get asked all the time? I'm sure people ask the same questions. It's like a frequently asked questions thing. Do you have any that you could just kind of answer on video, or maybe just say, hey, what something I get, or here's 2 things that I get, and go ahead and answer those?
Yeah, the 2 most common for sure is I don't know what to say and I don't know what to do. Right? That's like grieving 101, grief support 101. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. What I'll say about what to say is that here's how I jokingly put it. If you heard your Aunt Mildred say it to your mother at your grandmother's funeral, you should never say it again. Okay. So like all those old cliches, the platitudes, you can think of them for yourself. I've tried to erase them from my memory. Just never say them. Even if they give you some comfort, you don't get to be that comfortable. So instead, what you can do is find your own perfect words. Jay, I could make $1 bajillion if I could come up with the one perfect thing to say, but grief isn't one size fits all. So there's no one perfect thing to say. What's always going to be perfect is speaking from your heart and saying what's true for you. So, I'm so sorry this terrible thing happened. I don't know very much about grief, but what I know is I love you. And does it help if I come and just sit with you? Does it help if I make a cup of tea? Right. Let's figure it out together. As long as it takes, I'm here. Can I keep reaching out? There's a million things we can say. And when I do that in workshops, we do a whole brainstorming session and I give people time to think about, here's something you can do at home, right? Think about someone you said something and you were like, oh, that was not the right thing. Get yourself into your heart. Think about what would you say from your heart that's uniquely yours that you would say to that individual person, because that's how we're going to change what we say. Yeah. And the things people come up with, talk about being emotional, the things people come up with, we're always all crying. I could have $1 bajillion greeting card business from the beautiful things people say, but they're beautiful because they're uniquely theirs and they're going to a unique person. Yeah. So that's my best takeaway for what to say. What to do, it's really important to know that grievers cannot conceptualize very well. So that really common, heartfelt, anything you need, let me know. Give me a call anytime, I'm there for you. That's all lovely. And I got to the point where I had to stop listening to the words and just feel the intention, right? Which was, I love you and I want to help. As a griever, I can't think about, I'm trying to concentrate on breathing. And that's my assignment for today. What I might need 2 days from now, a week from now, tomorrow, in 5 minutes, I can't conceptualize because now I understand my brain is busy rewiring itself.
That's right. So
very specific offers. I'm going to the grocery store. Do you need bread? I could answer that. It's a yes, no question. So it's the opposite advice, right? What to say, open-hearted, open-ended love. What to do, specific offers, very, yes, no answers is perfect. Go stand in front of your cupboard. Tell me what's not there. I'll bring it to you this afternoon. Is that okay? Always asking permission. And it's easy things. All those practical day-to-day things that you're doing for yourself, your griever needs to. And some of them they might be struggling with. So I was talking to someone not that long ago and someone came and did their laundry. I thought, oh my gosh, where was the laundry angel? I don't even remember what we did about laundry. I think our solution was to buy more socks and underwear. I actually honestly think that's what we did. I don't even remember what we did about laundry. It was a hideous amount of time before we changed the sheets. I know that for sure. It was just gross. But things like that, if it's something you love to do, even better. Yeah. Do you have 2 favorite recipes that freeze well that I could cook for you? That's a brilliant offer. I'll bring them to you tomorrow. Do you want me to package them or do you want to package them yourself? Brilliant.
It is. That's really good. Food is always one of those things that I think everybody, because the last thing we can think about is like cooking or meals or meal planning or meal prep. It's like we don't even want to eat most of the time. So just something that you could, but when somebody shows up with food, it really, I think that is one of the nicest things that people that I've seen in my life and I've experienced that people do for others during those times that I think that's
Yeah.
a really good thing. It doesn't take a lot, and it really does show that you care about them. You want them to eat. Like, don't forget to eat through all this, it's like you have to do that.
And the flip side of it is, if you haven't asked what they need, I've never thrown away so much food in my entire life.
Right.
Than I did in those first few months, right? Because people brought us stuff, and as you said, we were barely eating. So if it was something perishable, it went bad. So it needed to be small portions that we could put in the freezer, and we didn't have very much space. And like, it actually became a lot. So a specific offer, like, do you have a favorite recipe you can send me that's easy to freeze? Or do you have something that when it's fast and easy and it settles your stomach? Like, the more specific, the better. Right. The more specific, the better.
That is awesome. Suzanne, thank you so much for this. This has been, I think you've really helped me in a number of ways that you'll probably never truly understand, or maybe you will, maybe you do. And maybe you're just laughing inside saying, I knew I could do that. But no, it was a lot of fun to talk to you about a topic that probably isn't typically viewed as fun. But it was really an educational experience, and 26 minutes just flies by. So I do appreciate the time today, and thanks for being a guest.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad, I've achieved my goal. I made you cry. I made you laugh. You learned something. My work is done here.
You did it all. And everybody, if you want to contact Suzanne, it's at the bottom, Suzanne@alivedexperience.com, or just go to alivedexperience.com, check her out. And hopefully not for something too personal and too tough right now, but at least maybe to get prepared for the next person that's going to go through something, or maybe you going through something yourself. So thank you so much. Right. There we go. Okay. Well, that was awesome. There was a fun and tough episode all in one. I'm so glad we got the chance to interview Suzanne. If you would like to be a future guest on Meet the Experts and try to make me cry, don't do that. Not cool. Don't do that. Then you can. It doesn't cost anything. We'd love to interview you, learn about you, your business, what makes you tick, what you like to do, what you offer to people, who you help, and all that. And we package it up in a 25, 30-minute interview. And it's yours to keep. We give you the interview like within a couple days. We can also do other cool things with that video for you if you'd like. But in order to find out what those cool things are, you should go to the website at the bottom of the screen. It's www.meettheexpertspodcast.com. That's www.meettheexpertspodcast.com. There it is, going in reverse. And until next time, have a great day.